Why do you think the way you do? Why do you act the way you act? Why do you do everything you do? Do you know? And does it matter? Well, today's guest explains why it's vitally important to figure out why you exist and how to express it. Welcome to the World Changer Show with Matt McWilliams. I'm your host, Mark Sieverkrop, a world changer just like you and Matt. On each show, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unleash the world changer inside of you and live with passion, lead with purpose, and leave a legacy. Thanks for joining us today. Now let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the World Changer Show. You're listening to episode 94 this week. And as always, you can find the links to everything talked about today and the unedited video cast of this interview on the show notes page at mattmcwilliams.com/094. And as you can probably tell, Matt is still taking a break and focusing on our clients. We're currently smack dab in the middle of a product launch. So here I am, and we're going to share another of the top episodes from the World Changer Show as determined by total downloads. Today, we're going to share the second most popular episode ever on this podcast, which is an interview that Matt did with Ridgelys Goldsborough, who is the author of The Why Engine. And Matt's going to give you a great introduction to him, and you're really, really going to love this interview. If you haven't seen it, it's very real. Matt goes through an exercise with Ridgelys, totally unscripted, totally unedited, and I think you're really going to enjoy the process as he goes through it. So take a listen to this interview, and after the interview, we're going to announce the winner of the Judy Robinett book that we had a giveaway for last episode. So enjoy this interview with Matt and Ridgelys Goldsborough.
All right, World Changers, I am honored to chat today with a fellow world changer, Ridgelys Goldsborough. Now, Ridgelys is an author and international speaker who believes in taking complex and challenging issues and making sense out of them. Now, get this. He started his first business at the age of 16 after graduating from law school all the way back in 1987, and he has founded 43 companies. He's written 11 books, hosted his own television show, created dozens of audio and video programs on success and prosperity. I could go on and on. But today we're going to focus in on one thing in particular, along with just getting to know Ridgelys, and that is that Ridgelys is the co-founder of the Why Engine, which is a revolutionary marketing and messaging program used by people worldwide to attract ideal clients based on the company's why. And I might add, not just companies. This is a powerful tool for individuals as well. When not traveling, which is rare, as Ridgelys and I were just talking about, Ridgelys lives down in Florida on the water with his wife, Kathy. They have 4 amazing children and share a passion for travel, dining, and philanthropy. Make a note right now to visit Ridgelys' show notes page at mattmcwilliams.com/017 for episode 17 to learn more about his world-changing message. Welcome to the show, Ridgelys.
Thank you so much, brother. I was looking out the window and a dolphin swam by, so I think this is a good omen for us today.
I hope so. Wow, what a beautiful view you must have.
Yes, sir. It's kind of nice to say hi to all my dolphin friends.
I'm looking out the window right now as we record this, and all I can see are leaves falling.
Well, it is that time of year, brother.
Which is also, admittedly, a beautiful sight. I've got this one gorgeous Japanese maple right outside of my window, and that thing is fire engine red right now, which is kind of cool. So Ridgelys, before we get into the Why Engine, I know that's something that we're going to fascinate people with today. I want to just talk a little bit about you and learn a little bit about this Ridgelys Goldsborough guy that, many of the audiences is hearing about for the first time. And one of the things that really struck out to me was you started your first business when you were 16 years old. Tell us about that.
Well, I think I fall into the category, Matt, of psychologically unemployable.
I love that term.
It just doesn't make any sense to me to build someone else's dream, especially when you, in today's modern society with the internet, et cetera, you can build your own. So I started out with a windsurfing company at the age of 16, which was primarily more of a learning experience, had a bunch of fun with it all. And then I, for whatever the reason, got talked into having my one and only job working for one of my father's clients. My dad was a lawyer, so he had a lot of clients. I worked for that client for literally 30 days, and that was it. Since then, I have never been able to work for someone else if it wasn't a commission-based situation or a company that was started by myself or partners with me. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm of the belief that, wait a second, we have limited time here. Let's create something. Let's make something happen. Let's build something. And in collaboration with others, great. Working for someone else, if it's a paid internship to learn something so you can go out on your own, maybe. Otherwise, I can't get it.
You know, and I have this belief, Ridgelys, and I always say I reserve the right to be wrong about this belief, but I'll probably be dead before anybody proves me wrong, so I can live with that, is that, you know, just inherently, maybe we're not all born entrepreneurs, so to speak, but I think we're all born with that passion and that belief that we can do it, that we're the solution to the problems in the world. And one of my missions is to get that passion that people have back, that belief that people have back. Because I think back, I don't know if you were like me, but you know, when I was a kid and there was something missing in the neighborhood or there was some problem that someone had, my first thought was, I can solve that. And I would set out to start a business to solve that. I probably started 7 businesses a week. Now I never followed through on any of them. And none of them made more than $10. But that was just the belief that I had when I was a kid. And somewhere along the line, I know you've seen this, we slowly lose that belief to where the line becomes get a safe job, go to college, get a safe job, settle down, and retire with the gold watch. And I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, is that just something that you had inherently inside of you when you were a child?
I don't know if it was inherent or if it was by being around entrepreneurial people, seeing people run their own shops. I lived in Europe for a long time, and I was down at the beach. And at the beach, there's always entrepreneurs. There's the guy that rents the chairs. There's the guy that does the windsurfing. There's the guy that has the other boats. There's the guy that has the paddle boards. There's the person that is walking up and down selling something. There was people like me who would do our job working as windsurfing instructors in the daytime and then would set up barbecues for all of our German, Dutch, and British clientele in the evening on the beach with a bonfire, figuring out how to maximize our profits by getting them to eat a lot of bread first so they wouldn't eat too many sausages, which cost us more money, that kind of thing. And I grew up in that environment. And as I got older, it was like, wait a second. Yes, you can make mistakes. And of my 43 companies, trust me when I tell you, most of them were tuition, for lack of a better term, great learning experiences. At the same time, you can make anything happen for yourself if you can believe. Go out there, do the work, and be willing to stick with it long enough to overcome the bumps that naturally happen, and then you can build something amazing. And it just does not make any sense to me at all to ever do it any other way.
I love the way you referred to as many of the. I'm assuming you're referring to of the 43 companies, the many that weren't successful. The what some people might refer to as a failure, a term I don't like. But I love how you refer to those as tuition.
Yeah, I often refer to them as, I say to people, well, you start a lot of companies. I said, yeah, 2 or 3 of them were very successful and 3 or 4 were marginally successful. And the others were tremendous learning experiences. I call it tuition. And it just got me to be in a better space for what comes next. And I don't regret any of them. Certainly some of the decisions were not the most intelligent decisions, and the ones that I made that were the worst losses were generally the ones that I made without taking the time to really vet it out, pay attention, blah, 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 all the things that you should do. And yet I still wouldn't trade it for anything based on the experiences that it gave me. And the feeling now, Matt, what you're talking about is, wait a second, anything really is possible. You just got to be willing to go for it. And most people are just not. And I get it. But if I can do anything I can to encourage somebody on your show to do that, I would say, look, be intelligent, be deliberate, make a plan. If you don't have a plan in writing, you just have a pipe dream, get it on paper, and then go out and find the resources and get behind it. Go for it.
Yeah, I love that philosophy. I mean, you could certainly pay traditional quote unquote tuition to go to college, to go wherever, or you could learn from, what many would call the school of hard knocks. And I know for me, I don't remember 7 things I learned in college. I still to this day remember the reproductive cycle of an amoeba for some odd reason. And I joke that's one of the 7 things that I learned in college. I don't remember the other 6. I'm just assuming there were 6 more in addition to the reproductive cycle of an amoeba. but of the 7 things I learned in college, I've learned 7 things this week just from breaking stuff. And that's been my philosophy, because the fastest way to propel yourself to get to where you actually are supposed to be is to find out where you're not supposed to go.
That's right.
Fail
your way forward.
Break stuff. Yeah. So I love that. I'm gonna have to steal that term, tuition. I have to talk about that. I paid some tuition this week it's a great term. I have got to steal that. That's my new thing. I'm just going to steal terms from my guests.
Consider it yours, man. Consider it yours.
So you mentioned these 43 companies. I'm kind of curious, maybe some of the listeners are as well. What were some of these, maybe highlight one of those tuition paying companies, and then maybe one of the companies that's been one of your big successes of those 43.
Well, certainly one of the more expensive tuition, very expensive tuition, was getting into the publishing business and doing a 4-color glossy magazine. I had the first ever 4-color glossy magazine for the direct sales industry. And, remember the magazine George that came out a little while ago?
I vaguely remember that, yeah.
Well, they dropped $40 million before they shut that one down. I wasn't quite that bad, but it was in the millions. And publishing is just brutally, brutally hard. And if you don't come up from a publishing background and you don't really know the ins and outs and you don't have the right connections and knowledge, a bear. And so I gave that a good shot. That was kind of fun. It lasted 4 years. It was 4 or 5 years. And I was like, you know what? This does not make any sense. However, here's the cool tuition piece. Because of what I learned at that point is how I've since written actually 12 books and been able to market those all over the world, and books and tapes and audios and DVDs and online courses and all kinds of other stuff that I learned during that very expensive tuition. So even though that particular company did not work out, it parlayed into the next one. And the company of View from the Ridge that you've seen has been around now since 2001. And that particular company has done very, very well in the publishing industry, even though my magazines did not do well at all. I had to shut them down. So that was one that kind of went the wrong way. In terms of something that went the right way, we were the first people to introduce supercomputers into Thailand that enabled a phone to have multiple ability to answer a line. In other words, until we got there with our machines, one phone number had one phone line, and that was it. You could not, if you dialed on number 1, that was it. That was the only phone number that could ever come in. So there was no possibility of ever doing a radio promotion or a TV promotion or any kind of promotion in the country of Thailand and giving one phone number, because there was only one line. So it would only ring to one person. So we were the first guys that brought in the computers that would enable a radio promo to go out, and then suddenly 60, 80, 100 lines could be answered on one single phone number. That company did really, really well.
I would imagine. That sounds like an awesome thing.
Yeah.
And what a life-changing thing for the people in Thailand. I mean, for the Thai people. When was that?
That was in 1991, 2, somewhere in there.
Wow. Yeah, it's hard to believe, because I mean I was born in 1979, and I remember living in America that radio promotions. I mean, I remember radio promotions from when I was 5 and 6 years old, and hearing something to win tickets to Disney on Ice and thinking it was the greatest thing in the world, and hey, you're a kid, you remember when the redial button first came out?
Sure.
And as a kid, it's like basically the kids who won Disney on Ice tickets were always the kids with redial buttons. You knew who the kids were that their parents just hadn't quite gotten them. And I remember I talked my mom into, I'm kid you not, when I was a kid, I talked her into getting us a new phone because it came with a redial button. And I wanted to win contests. Now, admittedly, I'm 35 years old and I've never won a radio contest. But I had a redial button at a young age just on the dream of winning a radio contest. So
right.
That's amazing that wasn't introduced there until the early 90s. But what a cool thing for the people there. Not just so that they can win Disney on Ice Bangkok edition tickets, but just to be able to have that freedom to make more phone calls like that. That's awesome.
But to give you an idea of how crazy and how technology has gone around the world and how it really takes time to collect the phone bills, what they did is they had motorcycle riders that would show up at your door with the bill and say, "Hi, it's time for me to collect your phone bill. We haven't collected it in a while." And it will be random, like, a month, maybe 2 months, sometimes 3 months. No, nothing automated whatsoever. And the person would say, "Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I don't have the money today, but if you come back on Monday, I'll have the money for you." And they'd send the motorcycle rider back again on Monday, and he'd show up at 1 o'clock and ask them for the money. And that's how they collected their phone bill.
Can you imagine that, just randomly having to owe money for for certain utilities?
But that's exactly how it was. And in America, we take it for granted that all these systems and technology exists that around a lot of the world even today is not in place. I had a call with East Africa this morning. I'm speaking in East Africa in a couple months. And the guy said, "Here, let me just let you know right up front that sometimes the phones work and sometimes they don't. Right now they're working, so let's have this conversation." I'm like, okay, great. And even today, it's America's one thing. Other Northern Europe, more modern countries, great. But in other places that are more in the third world, trust me, it's a completely different animal over there.
Yeah, for the life of me, I can't figure out. But I look at my website statistics every month or so, and country number 2 is Kenya, behind the United States. Every month, this small African nation is the second country for my website statistics. And I learned how I came to finally figure out was I had one of them sent me a tweet one day, and I was able to connect with them and eventually take the conversation to email. And it turns out that there's a pastor in Kenya who stumbled upon my website. Who knows why? Stumbled upon my website. Next thing I know, he's sharing it with, literally in the low thousands, like a 1,200 to 1,500 people in Kenya. But the cool thing about it is they read everything. Everything he sends them, like in a mass thing. You can look at it for certain days. Kenya makes up the majority of the visitors to my website. And that's the beauty of them now having access to internet. But I got to emailing with them, and I noticed that there are days when no Kenyans come to my website. And he said, "Yep, we just didn't have internet that day."
Right, exactly. That is exactly my point. And the guy that I was talking to today was in Kenya. As a matter of fact, I'm going to Nairobi
cool.
at the end of November, and then on to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania.
That's awesome. That'll be a fun trip. Have you ever been to Africa?
I have never been to Africa. First time.
Oh, okay. That's one of our goals as a family. My wife, Tara, and our daughter, Araceli. One of our goals is to visit 3 continents by the end of 2015.
Nice.
So that, by the end of 2016 to visit 3 continents. And the reason we picked 3 continents, just as an aside here, is, for me to go to Europe and hang out in Europe isn't that much of a stretch. I might not know the local language, but most people in Europe, not all, but most speak enough English to get by. And most of them look like me and,
right.
Generally talk like me in some parts. For me to go to Australia, not that much of a stretch. Everybody there looks like me. They talk like me with just funny accent. That's all. And the toilets flush the other way. That's pretty much the only difference between Australia and here. But the other continent that we would have to pick from would either be South America, Africa, or Asia, where most of the people don't look and talk like me.
That's right.
So that's why we picked 3, was just to make sure that I didn't make it easy. Because if I picked 10 countries, I'd be doing a little loop through Central Europe.
I'm with you, man. I'll be in all of those continents in the next in the 12-month period we're talking about.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the things I mentioned in the intro, and you've corrected me, I said you've written 11 books. It turns out it's 12.
Yep.
You've written 12 books, which is a task in and of itself. But one of those books is your brand new book, The Why Engine. And before we get into talking about that, I do want to mention that you have been gracious enough to give one audience member, and I'll tell people in the intro and outro how to get that book. But you're giving one audience member a CEO, a special CEO edition, signed special CEO edition. This keeps getting better. Edition of the Why Engine, which you sell for $195 on your website. And as you point out, people actually pay $195 on your website. This is not a $12.84 Amazon ebook. This is an amazing book. And again, we're giving away a free signed CEO edition. So I just wanted to point that out. But I want to talk about that Why Engine. And you write about on your site about the book, and you talk about how we will help you discover your why. We will show you how to create messaging around it so that you attract those who believe what you believe. We will breathe life into your cause and ignite your culture. This book is not about philosophy. It's about tools, business tools that you can use immediately to improve your organization, both internally and externally. So tell us more about this book and what it can do for the world changers listening, Ridgeley.
So the biggest thing is understanding that it is all about understanding and knowing your why. And so I think for everybody to get a sense of what the Why Engine is all about, and the new edition, so the Why Engine is the CEO edition. A new edition is going to come out that is not a CEO edition, that will be at a more reasonable price point in 2015, called Know Your Why. And the whole thing is to be able to understand that everybody has a why, and it's like the law of gravity. Whether you know your why or you don't know your why, it still affects you. It affects every decision that you make, why you think the way you think, why you talk the way you talk, why you do. Literally everything that you do is based on this programming, this hardwiring, this coding that every single one of us have, and unfortunately most of us don't know. And by not knowing it, you are guided by it, you are literally run by it without having any understanding of what it is. So my mission, our mission as an organization, is we picture a world where everybody knows their why, where people see each other why to why. And so part of the mission of putting out this book is to get the entire world in that space of, figuring out their why they exist, why the rest of us should care, and as you mentioned, expressing it. So that rather than talk about what you do, what you sell, what you offer, which frankly nobody cares about because there's somebody right down the street that offers the exact same thing, you speak about why you are here. What do you believe? What do you stand for? What are you about? Tell me about you first. I care about you first and your products and services second, and in no other order. I really don't care about your products and services unless I care about you, because there's somebody else that offers what you offer. It's really a matter of that personal connection, that authenticity, genuineness, real space that comes from why do you do what you do? How do you see the world? What is the lens that you use? What is your why? And our mission is to get everybody to know what it is.
And if I remember correctly from my good friend Hunter Ingram, who introduced us, there are 9 whys. Is that correct?
That is correct. 9 whys.
9 whys. And he mentioned something that you do that, in his words, is absolutely life-changing. And also I had a client of mine, you and I were talking in the pre-chat. I think we spoke yesterday, actually, before recording this. And turns out we have a mutual friend who is a client of mine. And I was reading from your site, and I found a quote from him. He said that, let's see what he said here. He said, our employees were really impressed that we made an investment in helping them personally. And one employee walked up to me the day after and said it was life-changing for her, and she was, quote, doubling down on her commitment to the company. So we've talked about this process that my friend Hunter says is absolutely life-changing, that's caused people to double down on their commitment to the company. We've talked a little bit about this process. I think I've whetted the listeners' appetites enough. What is that process of finding your why, Ridgeley?
So what we have to do to find your why, which is a little bit unique, is we have to tap into the feeling brain. Everybody makes decisions based on feelings and then justifies them based on logic. So we make a decision with a feeling, and then our brain kicks in with the thinking side and says, oh, that's good. That's right. That's right. Got all the analysis. How many times you maybe had the experience, Matt, that all the data seems to add up, everything seems to be what it should be, and then at the last second, you just you don't go ahead with a decision because it doesn't feel right. You ever had that happen?
Oh, yeah.
All the time, right? And that's because
every day.
Every day. Because most people don't understand that decisions are not made based on rational thought. Decisions are made based on feelings, and then they are justified based on rational thought. So in order to figure out why you do what you do, we have to tap into the space of feeling that gets you to that feeling place of, I do this because it makes me feel right. It makes me feel good with the world. It makes me feel successful. And when I get that feeling, I want to replicate that feeling over and over because I always want to feel good with the world. I always want to feel successful. What does that look like? Well, we got to tap the feeling brain. And the challenge is that's really hard because the feeling brain doesn't understand words. So we have to do it through stories. So I have to ask somebody, I want you to tell me some stories. When someone tells a story, if it is vivid in their mind, it's like they're tapping into their emotional memory bank. They're literally replaying in their brain exactly what happened in that space. And as they replay that, they can feel the emotion that went along with it. So they're telling me a story, which is a thinking brain function, but they're feeling the emotion, which is a feeling brain function. If they can articulate that in words, we can get down to the heart of their programming, why they do what they do, and figure out their why. Very cool.
You know, I'm about to do something that scares me a little bit, and that we talked about it beforehand, and you have agreed to take me through this process of finding my why. And a little scary to do this live on a podcast, but I think it'll be fun. So if you're willing, let's do that. Let's go through this process so people can see what this is like. And well, by the end of this, I'll know my why, which I think is kind of cool.
Oh, we can take it even a little further than that. I got a surprise for you don't even know about, so that's all good.
Oh, I don't like surprises, though.
But your listeners like surprises, so there you go. It's all about that.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And I want to point out one thing real quick that you said was that, you know, the fact that we make decisions based on feelings. I know me. I can speak for myself. I don't know about anybody else, but I like to think that that's not true. I like to think, but you know what? I'm a smart guy. I make rational decisions. But, you know, the thing is, I don't make rational decisions in my marriage. You know, when my wife and I get into an argument, I think every guy's been there. I say things that I regret. That wasn't a rational decision. So why would that same brain process not apply to business or to whatever? It applies to every part of our lives. I love to think that I'm this, you know, intelligent, rational. I think my way through things in a specific way, but the truth is I make almost every decision on an emotional basis. It's not rational for me to drive back to the store at midnight to return a $3 carton of milk because it's past the expiration date. I'll spend $2.50 on gas to get there and back, and it's midnight. I should be sleeping. That's not rational. But I'm upset, so I drive to the store at midnight for a carton of milk. So I just wanted to point that out. If you think that that's not you, it is you. So listen up.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? How many times have you had that feeling that you shouldn't do something, and you overrode that with your brain, and then you went, oh, I wish I hadn't have done that. I felt it. I wish I hadn't have done that.
Hang on, I'm pulling up the calculator. I'm calculating the number of days since I was approximately 6 years old.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's happened approximately 74,000 times in my life.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And you got to trust that intuition. So, all right, man, we're going to jump right in. I'm not going to tell you too much about the process. Just going to do it, let everybody listen in on it. So I think you'll enjoy this process. Just going to ask you to tell me a couple of stories. And like I said, it's like tapping the emotional memory bank. So tell me about something that happened to you at work with another person. In other words, a specific interaction with another human being that you can recall that made you feel successful?
Well, I'm thinking of one very, very specific interaction recently where it's a client of mine. We'll leave it at that. And this person, we were having some back and forth, and basically the conversation revolved around, I believe that I know how to do something and I have the statistics to back it up. And they say, but that's not how we do it. And so we kind of did the butt heads for about 2 weeks thing. You know, men might refer to it as well, we were having a contest to see who could pee the farthest, basically. Mm-hmm. And eventually as we got closer to the end, I finally said, let's get on the phone. We have our weekly call. Let's just discuss this. And I said, you know, I shared the exact same numbers I've always shared with him. And I said, you know, ultimately I came down to, I said, I'll tell you what, can we test it? Can I get a test for basically, and I didn't use the phrase my way versus your way. I said, can we get a test for the two ways, you know, and I'll do them both, and we'll do one in the current format and one in the format that I'm proposing. Can we get a test? And the answer was yes. And when we did that test, the data showed exactly what I thought it would show. And I didn't say a word, though. I actually waited for him to ask me for the data rather than immediately. You know, of course, I'm refreshing the stats page every 3 hours. You know, like I want to send that email that says, I told you so, but I didn't. And I waited for him and he asked me for the data. And I said, you know, here you go. And gave him the data. And now we're doing it, quote unquote, my way. Nice.
So tell me, and so I want to point something out. What you just told me was what happened. All of that is the thinking brain, right? Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what I asked you was tell me about something that made you feel successful. Got to go to the feeling brain. And by the way, what you did is exactly what everybody does. I mean, that's just, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's just, I wanted to point it out because I know you're a very thinking person, very smart person, and you'll kind of go, ooh, you're right. That's kind of interesting. So that's very cool. Tell me, what about getting that person to come around and see it your way? What about that made you feel successful?
I think it was two things that made me feel successful. Obviously, early on, I'm frustrated. You know, I know how to do this. I know the best practice. And I'm very frustrated with, it's not about not getting my way. I'm just frustrated because, for one, I get paid on performance from this client and I want it to perform as well as possible. And for two, admittedly, I have an ego and I think it should be done a certain way. How I felt when it came around, I felt two things. One, I felt relief that we were doing it the right way going forward. And secondly, I felt a sense of pride because I finally backed off my stubborn, you know, just arguing the point over and over, and essentially the definition of insanity. I was saying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. And I finally found a new way, a better way to communicate with this person in a more gentle tone that was effective. So for me, the feeling I got was a sense of accomplishment and pride, and also excitement for the fact that going forward, it's going to be done the right way.
Right. And so tell me, what about improving the process and making sure it was done properly? What about that made you feel successful?
Well, again, for me, obviously we ended up with the result that I wanted all along. And so I felt a sense of victory, I guess you could call it. But also, like I said, you know, I know for me, one of the big parts of that was that I was patting myself on the back at the end and feeling that sense of pride that, again, that I'd figured out a better way to handle it, because I'm by nature a very stubborn person. And so I was not going to back down, but I finally took the time and said, okay, wait a minute. This is not working. This method that I am using is broken and I need to find something better. Mm-hmm. And I was able to find that better way. So again, it goes back to that sense of accomplishment for for that specific. I think that was the thing I was most proud of. The future results and the fact that the numbers are going to be better, that's all great. But for me, it was that accomplishment for finding a better way of communicating with somebody that is not by nature somebody that I communicate well with.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to switch it up, and we're going to talk about something else. Tell me about something that happened to you that has absolutely nothing to do with work. In other words, it can be friends, family, your health, relationship of some kind, a hobby you may have, whatever you want. Something that happened outside of work with another human being. Again, a specific interaction that you can remember, conversation, whatever you want, that made you feel successful outside work.
Yeah. I'll go back to very recently. My wife and I, we finished our second half marathon, and my wife is faster than me. She's a little 102-pound bullet, and I'm 5 feet tall, 102 pounds. I'm 6'2.5", about 240. I'm rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, as Chris Berman would say, down this 13.1 miles. And if she wanted me to, she could have left me in her dust. She could have finished at least 15 minutes ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
But what for me was that feeling of success, that feeling of accomplishment, was not the fact that we completed the race. Obviously, that was a big part. Was that we ran it together. And for me, it was, I allowed her to motivate me. And I didn't get frustrated when she, when we ran it the year before, I constantly got frustrated at her because I'm like, why are you leaving me? Because we decided we were going to run it together. For me, it was that sense of that we did it together, but also the sense that I kind of withheld my natural emotions when somebody like her tries to encourage me and say things encouraging to me.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be like, just leave me alone, shut up. I'm trying to focus on running my half marathon here. But I let those words actually do what she intended for them to do, which was to motivate me to finish. And we ended up beating last year's time by 19 minutes, and we crossed the finish line holding hands together, which was, for me, a pretty exciting moment.
Nice. And what about the fact that you were able to, unlike in the past, kind of withhold some emotions that might have come bubbling out and decided to kind of zip it and let it all sink in? What about that made you feel successful?
I think it kind of goes back to the same thing I was talking about in the work situation where, I was able to identify what doesn't work and withhold that first emotion. For me, that's very important. I've identified that as something I have to do in life. I have to withhold my first reaction. For me, if I can just, after somebody says something, if I can just shut up for 5 seconds, I will very rarely, I shouldn't say never, I will rarely say anything stupid for the rest of my life if I just don't say anything for 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. That 5-second part of my brain is not very intelligent. It's everything after that is. And so I think for me, it was that was part of it, was not getting frustrated and not getting, annoyed, but also, allowing somebody else to speak encouragement into my life, which is not my default, was, I don't know, and it felt good. And then obviously the result, crossing together and that sense of accomplishment and doing so much faster than we had intended, that was a sense of accomplishment as well. We could tell, with 3 miles to go, assuming I don't completely bonk and hit the wall, that we're going to beat our goal time. That was exciting, and I kept getting more excited. And it turns out we ended up those last 3 miles we got progressively faster, which was rare for me. Very
cool. So what about the fact that you were able to withhold that initial emotion, as you said, and the result worked out? What about that was important to you?
That because of that, we were able to do it together. That was important. And because of that, it had a positive result. Mm-hmm. Results are important to me. That was very important. A positive result being that we were 3 minutes and some odd seconds, 21 seconds, I think, under our goal time was very important to me. And, I look back on the race, it was just more enjoyable. It wasn't, I'm at the 10-mile mark. Admittedly, it gets to be a little
Sure.
It gets to be a little bit drudgery, but it wasn't nearly as treacherous as the year before, and I wasn't as sore. I didn't cramp up. I think all of those things kind of added up to just making it overall more enjoyable experience. But, just talking with her and, motivating each other, because I even said some, believe it or not, said some motivating things to her, which is not something I traditionally do while I'm running. I usually don't even talk. So I think all of those things kind of added up to make it a more enjoyable experience for me.
Yeah, and you notice how interesting it was, and you identified this, and this is exactly where we find your why. Remember when you said, gosh, I'm saying the same thing I said the first time around? Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because that's exactly what it is. It's you repeat the behavior over and over that makes you successful. So you said the same thing. You finally were able to hold back from blurting out with your client, and as a result of that, you found a much better way. You communicated the da-da-da-da. This time around, with your wife, you withheld your communication, and it turned out much better because you ended up being 19 minutes shorter this time on your half marathon and crossing the finish line holding hands. Can you see how those two stories are basically the same?
Absolutely. They're almost identical stories. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Nobody does, because that's the idea. You don't think about it. You just live it on a continuous basis. Do you feel successful, Matt, when you find a better way of doing things?
Oh, absolutely. For me, that's one of my greatest accomplishments. It's kind of how now that I think about it, yeah, that's how my brain operates. It's constantly scanning for that better way. In fact, it's sometimes hard to turn it off, Ridgelys, because I notice it everywhere.
Right.
I annoy myself sometimes.
I know, man. You're the kind of guy that sometimes has a hard time ordering from a menu at the restaurant because you want to choose thing number one, but then you look down and say, well, what if number 3 is better? Or what if number 4 is better? I don't know. I get confused.
And it's funny. I had this experience recently on a trip to California, and I'm sitting at breakfast, and there's nothing on the menu that is exactly what I want. And so I say, there's an omelet called the California omelet, but it needs a little bit of variation, and that's totally me. I don't order off the menu. I have to vary it in some way, shape, or form.
You got to make it better.
And I say exactly. And I say. Can I have the California omelet? So the California omelet it's 3 eggs. I think there's some cream cheese, some avocado, some red pepper and onions. And I said, can you add spinach? I kid you not. Both the other guys at breakfast, one of them hadn't ordered yet. One of them had already ordered. They both ordered the exact same thing. The one guy goes, actually, you know what? I'd like to change my order to that because I never thought to add spinach. That I wanted spinach in my omelet. And the other guy's like, I'll have the exact same thing. And it didn't really hit me at the time, but now that you think about it, that's a pattern as well that I'll quote unquote innovate breakfast even.
That's right.
And then everybody wants the same thing. I can't eat regular pancakes. If you put regular pancakes in front of me originally, they're disgusting. But if you take some oatmeal and some flaxseed and some banana and vanilla and you mix it all up and it has to be different each time, that's a pancake to me.
That's because you're always looking for a better way. See, that's the whole point is we all, Matt, live our why every single day. And the drag is most people don't know what it is. So instead of them having the empowerment and the ability to use that to make their life better, to improve their business, their relationships, etc., it just runs them. So let's have some fun with this, okay? You ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Tell me how you let the world know that you're always trying to innovate, you're always looking for a better way, you're always trying to find anything you can do to tweak and improve stuff. How do you let them know? When you're working with your clients, talking to them, doing your coaching, how do you let them know that that's you?
I tell them.
Tell them what? What do you tell them? What?
A good example, and this isn't maybe a generalization, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that it's one of those things I have to work on because it can be annoying is when my wife, she came to me recently with this idea, and I don't want to get into the specifics because I don't want to share her idea with the world because this is her idea, but she has this idea for a product, and within 2 seconds, I'm immediately going, yeah, we can do this. But you know what if we did this instead? What if we took that piece that you mentioned and we did this with it? Oh man, that would be so much better. And I'm looking at her, and basically what she's hearing is, yeah, thanks. I just had a great idea and you tore it apart.
Right. So tell me again, stay with me on this, because this is going to be a huge gift for you. How do you let the world know that you're always asking the question, what if, that you're always looking to do things better? How do you let them know? When you get ready, before you even start talking to a client, before you take them on, how do you communicate that that's who you are and that that's your gift?
I'm not sure. I definitely have never thought of that.
What do you do? What do you do to let people know that Matt's the kind of guy who's going to do whatever I can to make it better?
I think the answer, maybe this isn't the answer you're looking for. I tell them.
You tell them what?
I tell them, that we're going to do. So speaking from a business standpoint, I gave kind of a personal example with my wife just in. From a business standpoint, I tell them, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do A, B, and C. Here's why we're going to do that. Here's how that differs from what company, X does. Here's how here's how I learned that. I tell them that story of how I arrived at the conclusion that A, B, and C are the proper methods, and really bring them into why that is, and make them believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that what Matt's saying is not, I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's dress. This is a proven method that's actually going to work.
Mm-hmm. What else do you do?
I often, but not probably as much as I should, I share, for lack of a better term, case studies. I share, again, kind of that, we're going to do A, and here's why we're going to do A, and here's who
what's the point behind sharing the case studies?
To prove it's proof that it actually works. I think it's validation, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm. And why would you want to give proof?
Because I certainly believe that when I am attempting to explain why my better way is the better way, I want to address any doubts that they have in their mind. And now I'm seeing sort of in a way, maybe perhaps where this is going, that I think often I fear that other people are going to see. They're going to see my quote unquote better way, but maybe they're not even going to believe that it's a better way. And the reality is, oftentimes they would if I would just tell them the better way and shut up.
And why do you want to address their doubts? Tell me why you want to do that.
Because I want them to be on board with the idea.
So that
I want to. Well, I want them to be a part of the journey, not just clients, but in personal life or in people who work for me. I want them to come alongside me and be a part of the journey of whatever it is we're doing together.
And the purpose behind all of that is what?
Ultimately, to arrive at the destination, which is to do things the way that I think they should be done. It's hard to admit, but to get them to get that buy-in, to arrive at the conclusion that I've already come to, that I think is right. Mm-hmm. That new and better way.
Okay, cool. And so I'm kind of about to fry your brain and give you a message, my gift to you, that you can use any way you want for your radio show, podcast, anything you want, whatever you want to do. And this is how you see the world. Ready?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Matt McWilliams, and I believe there's a better way to do just about anything, and I want to share that with you. I want to share processes, why we do what we do, how we differentiate ourselves from others, and figure out why a step-by-step process, A, then B, then C, is going to work. I'm going to give you case studies that'll show you the proof that our method does in fact work, address all of your doubts to get you on board so that you'll come along on the journey and we can arrive at a destination of success that will make your business and your life better. If that sounds like somebody you want to work with, give me a call.
Wow. Brain officially fried.
Pretty amazing, isn't it?
That is amazing, Ridgelys. Wow. And see, just to turn this back to the audience for a second, I think that this is the power of what you do and what the power of finding your why is. And you're right. It's a pattern that replays in every aspect. My wife often not jokes. She gets frustrated. She says, "Don't talk to me like I'm one of your business people. Don't talk to me like a client. Don't talk to me like I'm somebody you do business with." And the reality is, I repeat the same mistakes with her that I repeat in business, the same positives that I repeat with her that I repeat in business, because the why is ultimately always the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, it always is the same.
I think so many people make that mistake. I've made that mistake my entire life of seeing different whys. I have my business why, I have my social why, I have my family why, but the reality is they're all exactly the same. And yeah, I even think about the recipe as a perfect example. I look up a recipe online. I have never once, since the age of 7, followed a recipe exactly as I've been given it.
Of course not, because there's a better way.
Why would I use red pepper? Let me try jalapenos. That's just a better fit. And the problem is I never actually find out what it would have tasted like with red peppers.
That's right. But you do know there's a better way, so you're good. See?
Well, that's powerful.
What's really powerful is expressing it. When you really share with the world that you are constantly in search of a better way, that you operate from a premise of, well, what if this or what if that, questioning, wanting to tweak everything that you ever do, you will find those clients, those people who resonate with that, who say, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's exactly who I want to be with. Those people become your ideal clients. They become raving fans. They become advocates for your business. Those are the best possible clients you can have.
And so when you're looking for people to work with, when you're looking, audience, for people to be a part of your mission in life, your calling, you want to bring alongside people who are in alignment with your why. And like he said, when people are looking for what you offer, what your why is, and those mash up together, then you're probably not going to butt heads as often.
No, for sure. They're going to be. You don't want people who need what you have. What you want is people who believe what you believe, so that you can get on the same page, so you can make something happen, so you can get past the little stuff, the petty differences, the whatever, to really make something happen. That's what you want. And the only way you're going to attract those kind of people is by expressing what you believe in a clear and compelling way that enables them to raise their hand and say, wow, that feels right to me. That feels good. I want to be with Matt.
Originally, I've mentioned before, again, well, first of all, actually, let me come back to that. First of all, thank you for taking me through that, and thank you for helping me find my why. I'm already looking for a way to improve upon it, of course. But I'm already thinking it. It's hard for me to finish this interview because my mind is already going to places where it's like, here's how I can use that, and I see how that's just how my mind works, and I love that. But just turning our attention back to the audience for a moment, is this something that people, if they are one of the lucky ones, or they are the lucky one to win this book, and they go through this book, is this something that people are able to do a little bit on their own, or is it something that they need a quote-unquote facilitator to do?
So the systems that we use are in the book, just like I took you through right here, as well as the scripts that we use. If someone practices, then yes, they can become proficient. What you don't want to do at all is say, I think I'm going to use my office as a guinea pigs, and I'm going to do the whys of all of my team members before I know what I'm doing. That is kind of like playing Russian roulette with your team and not a good idea. Is it a good idea to figure out the why of your team members? Only if you want to have the most unbelievably inspired culture you could possibly create.
And who would want that?
I know, really, right? But if you're interested in that, then of course you're going to want to practice yourself on friends and family members where you can get some some water under the bridge kind of a thing, get a little bit of experience, and otherwise, of course, use a facilitator, get it right.
And if you're interested in working with Ridgelys on that, if you're interested in having him do it, or Ridgelys, I didn't ask, do you have others that you've quote unquote certified to do this at all?
Oh yeah, we have a whole, an entire coaching team, very large team, dozens of coaches. And we use our coaches to help do this for other individuals and companies more so than myself. I just do this for my friends like you, Matt.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that. And we'll link to Ridgelys' website where you can get all of that information if you're interested in working with him or one of his team members. Again, it's mattmcwilliams.com/017 for episode 17. Turning the spotlight back on you for just a minute before we call this, we wrap this up here, Ridgelys.
Sure.
What's exciting you most right now about your business, your life, your family, the impact you're having? What's exciting you right now?
So being able to leave a legacy to me is the ultimate goal, some type of a small imprint that we have through our passing on this planet. And for me, the legacy is the body of work from 30 years ago all the way till today, though I must say that this particular work about spreading the why and helping people understand their why is, in my opinion, so profound and deep that it's like a movement. And therefore, being able to lead a movement around the world, I'll be in 26 countries this year alone, another 20 or so next year already on the books, and take that all over the world is super exciting. Everywhere I go to make friends, have a chance to give them the gift that I just gave to you, and make that have an impact in a big way around the world is super exciting. Give you an idea, when I start in November, I leave from my humble home in Pensacola looking at the dolphin, and I go to London, Frankfurt, Berlin, Barcelona, Istanbul, Lagos, Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, Oman, Lahore, Pakistan, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait City, and back to New York by Christmas. And that's everywhere I'm going. It's CEO crowd after CEO crowd after big, huge group. Everybody wants to know about the why. It is very, very exciting.
Wow. One of the ironic things is you answered the second to last question. There's only like 2-3 questions I ask of every single guest. And one of those questions is, what legacy do you want to leave? And how about it? You already answered it.
Yeah, to me, it's not about the next book or the one book or the great speech or the whatever. It's all about that body of work. Somebody says to me, what's your best book? I'll say the next one. What's your best speech? The next one. Always wanting to just improve and make it better and go forward. And the totality of all that work, of decades of work, that to me is a fantastic legacy.
I love that mindset. It reminds me of, I grew up playing golf, and my dad was my golf instructor, and he told me about this guy that was being interviewed by the press, and they said, "What's your favorite golf course?" And he said, "This one." Really? How, this isn't one of the top tracks on the PGA Tour. It's an average course. This is your favorite one? He said, "Yeah." "Why is it your favorite?" "Because it's the one I'm playing this week." Right. I said, "Ask me next week. What's your favorite? Ask me on Sunday after the tournament finishes. What's your favorite golf course?" "The next one, the next one, the next one." And I just, it's that positive mental attitude, because so many people get to a golf course and are like, "Yeah, this golf course doesn't fit me. I don't like this golf course." Well, who's ever won a golf tournament, a golf course that they just had mentally told themselves they don't like?
Exactly.
That's just such a defeatist attitude. So what's next for you? What do you think the future holds for Ridgelys Goldsborough?
I think it's exactly what we're doing, which is to go around the world speaking, sharing this message with people, writing additional books, doing more speeches in various countries, taking this into different languages, and helping the world discover their why. I really feel like if we had a world where people knew why they do what they do, it would be a better world, and we're looking forward to being a small part of that.
Well, I can only imagine, for me, just thinking ahead, how much this is going to help me communicate, because I will say, if to myself, and approximately I would imagine 1/9 of the people listening, also their why is looking for a better way. I can already think of, first of all, finding the right people that align with that, but also the the positives and the negatives associated with it. There's going to be positives and negatives to other people associated with every why. And naturally, for me, my negative is it always seems like I'm trying to shoot down others' ideas because I immediately think of ways to improve them. And I can think of even that recipe thing. If somebody hands me a recipe and then comes over to dinner, they're expecting it to be made according to the recipe. They have an expectation. And when I destroy that expectation, sometimes that might turn out great. And they go, wow, you actually made this better. But it could also hurt their feelings.
Right, of course.
And so for me, I think one of the answers is, like I said, it goes back to that, just shut up for 5 seconds after somebody presents an idea. Don't think of ways to improve it. And if I do think of ways to improve it, I don't need to share them with them within 20 seconds of hearing the idea.
Just give it a minute. Let it sink in, my brother.
Yeah. Wait for them. That's mine, is probably to wait for them to come to me and say, do you have any suggestions? And, I'm going to be chomping at the bit going, oh, yeah, I do.
Yep.
Maybe not be too excited to give them suggestions.
Exactly.
So before I let you go, one last thing, Ridgeley. I always like to leave the audience with one last piece of advice. And I know me, I listen to a lot of content. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read blogs, and it's easy for me to move from shiny object to shiny object. So I like to keep this actionable advice, if you will, something that somebody can do in the next 48 to 72 hours. Just one thing they can do in that window that will help them to unleash the world changer inside of them. Do you have that one piece of advice?
I would say go to your website, click on the page, and take a look at at our website, which the link will be there. Go there and surf around a little bit and feel the difference when you start understanding the power of what your why can be. So my thing would be, hey, I picture a world where everybody knows their why. I want you who are listening to know your why. So go check it out through Matt's website.
So that call to action, that one thing is find your why. And again, remember, you can go to mattmcwilliams.com/017 to find out how to win a signed $195 CEO edition of The Why Engine by Ridgelys Goldsborough. Hey guys, he's a world-renowned author and a dynamic speaker, and he's helping people all over the world to find their why and find real success in the process. Ridgelys, you are a world changer. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Matt, and thank you, and thank everybody that's listening.
Wow. I still love that interview. I remember when Matt first released it, and I was blown away, and I still am. The authenticity shown by Matt as he went through the exercise with Ridgelys to discover his why was just unbelievable. It was a level of realness that I very rarely hear in podcasts. Even our podcast, it seemed like the interviews that Matt does, they're very real, but this seemed to go a level above. And I hope you really, really recognized that and recognized how powerful this experience of figuring out what your why is and what you're supposed to be doing can be in your life. One of the things I really, really loved about it is that I can look back on my experience with being friends with Matt for several years now and working with him for the last few months. And I can say that the conclusions that Ridgelys helped Matt come to describe him to a T. That stuff really works. And I think that's so powerful to see how understanding our why we do things, why we act the way we act, why we say the things we say, why we interact with other people the way that we do, it makes a big difference because then we can harness it and we can use it to our advantage. So I hope you love that interview. I'm not going to go on and on. This is definitely an interview that speaks for itself, and I don't need to do a bunch of review of what it was about, but I hope you saw the power in it. And I hope that you'll take a chance to go over to the show notes page at mattmcwilliams.com/094 and learn more about Ridgelys. Head to his website, take a look up some books that he has, find those things that will help you to discover your why. But before we get to this week's question, as we always do, we're going to thank a few more people who have left us ratings and reviews on iTunes. Okay, so this week we have 6 more people. We have Steve Olsher, Jonathan Alonso, A.K. Napa, Keith Ledig, the Portland Cool Podcast, and Mike Bruni. And some of you may recognize that last name. Mike was actually a guest on the World Changer Show back in episode 45 when Matt and him talked about building your own brand and starting with the world you know. And if you want to take a listen to that, we'll definitely have the link to that in the show notes as well. And we want to point out one, Keith Ledig had a fantastic review, and I don't know that Matt would read this one or not because he's a pretty humble guy, but I loved this review. And Keith says, "Wow, what an awesome podcast. I find the World Changer Show to be an amazing source of knowledge, making my life better. I'm busy catching up on all the past episodes. It's like a marathon of wisdom. So much better than TV or radio. I have my own podcast and will totally quote unquote borrow from Matt. Great work, my friend. Please keep the absolutely outstanding content coming. Your podcast is inspirational, and I will try to keep up." Thanks, Keith. That was a fantastic review, and I hope that we're continuing to keep that outstanding content coming from your opinion. Now, if you haven't left us a rating or review on iTunes, you can find the link to leave a review on the show notes page at mattmcwilliams.com/094. And we would really appreciate it if you would take the time to do that. That makes a big, big difference in being able to be found by new listeners and be able to help others to change the world because of those ratings and reviews. You can also get a free copy of Matt's book, Who Will Change the World If Not the Entrepreneur, for free in the resource section of the show notes page, which again is mattmcwilliams.com/094. And this is so important and so powerful because this book really drives home the importance and the power of being an entrepreneur, of finding out what your why is, and then bringing that to the world. And, in this interview, Matt and Ridgelys talked a lot about entrepreneurship and talked about the power of being able to chase your dreams and focus on the things that you think are important. So again, that is on the show notes page, absolutely free. Just put in your email, tell us where to send it to you, and we will send you a copy of that book, Who Will Change the World If Not the Entrepreneur. And now, this week's question is, very simply, what is your why? Head on over to the show notes page, mattmcwilliams.com/094 to answer that question, as well as get the links to everything we talked about today and the unedited video cast. Until next week, remember, you were born to change the world. You were born to make history. You were born with a why inside of you. So believe it, become it, and pass it on. All right, just getting the old audio stopped here. Appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this. Hope you loved that interview. It was fantastic. And, it's been a couple weeks without Matt, but rumor has it he's going to be back next week. So thanks so much for enjoying these best of hits. We still have the #1 podcast interview from the past 95 episodes now to come, and that'll probably be coming in the next couple months sometime. We'll be sharing that with you, but it's a fantastic episode, and I know you will love it. If you have not heard it before, you will love it. And even if you have heard it, there's going to be tons of nuggets that you can get out of it that maybe you missed the first time. So thanks so much, guys. We appreciate you. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate you watching. And we will see you next week on episode 96 of the World Changer Show. Oh, and by the way, for those of you watching this, because most people don't, we have some cool stuff planned for the 100th episode of the World Changer Show. So make sure you keep watching for that. If my math is right, that will be hitting iTunes somewhere around Thanksgiving. Maybe right before, I think, maybe right after, somewhere right in there, mid to late November. So be watching for that. We've got some big stuff planned and totally looking forward to sharing that with you. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day. Have a good week. And remember, you are world changers.